Namaste and very good evening to all the viewers. I welcome you all for Pragya Prerana Talk of the Week. Today's talk is on Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, its relevance for the present generation. This talk will be delivered by Professor Prabhakar G Gai. On behalf of the Pragya team and on my own behalf, I welcome you all again for this talk. Let me introduce Professor Gai to you all. Dr. Prabhakar G Gai had his graduation BSc at Yurajas College, Mysore with CBZ combination in 1969. Then he obtained his post-graduation degree, MSc in Zoology at Karnataka University, Dharwad. His specialization was in marine zoology. That was in the year 1972. He got his PhD from University of Mysore from the Department of Zoology in 1987, specializing in Drosophila genetics. The title of the thesis is Contributions to Our Knowledge on the Cytotaxonomy and Ecogenetics of Drosophila in South Karnataka district of Karnataka state. He has a vast teaching experience. He started his teaching career at Mahajan's College, Mysore and Yurajas College, Mysore for a short period. And then he joined Vijaya College, Baswangudi, Bengaluru in 1977. And he retired from his service in 2007. During research work at University of Mysore, he has discovered 3 new species of Drosophila. He completed a research project funded by UGC on ecogenetics of Drosophila in Bengaluru district during 1988 to 1990. Apart from academics, he is a sports lover. He was a captain of school cricket, football and hockey teams. Was a captain of Vijaya College staff cricket team also. So lastly, he was selected as scientist grade 1 in the Zoological Survey of India in 1980, but he did not join for personal reasons. So I welcome him for today's talk. Over to Professor Prabhakar G Gai. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Mahesh. Pragya Foundation Chairman and Founder Dr. Mahesh has invited me to give a talk on a science topic. And I thought, as a student of evolution, which I took to it during my PhD degree course or PhD research period, I thought a topic like Charles Darwin and his contributions to the theory of evolution and its relevance as of today could be an apt topic for Dr. Mahesh's weekly talk of Pragya and Prerana weekly talk program. So I thank Dr. Mahesh for his invitation and the way that he has introduced me to the audience. Thank you, Dr. Mahesh. Now, before I begin the topic on Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution, I would like to briefly tell, if not everything in detail, at least briefly touch upon a few of the events that led to Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution. In fact, the book that was published by Charles Darwin after his historic voyage was Origin of Species Through Natural Selection, which was published in 1959. And he passed, Charles Darwin was born in 1809 and passed away in 1882. Ultimately, it is known that he died of IHD disease, ischemic heart disease, and cardiac failure. Well, before I come upon the topic, let me briefly touch upon the other aspects of evolution which has led to his conclusion or his theory. Basically, the whole idea of this theory of evolution is on the presumption that life originated only on planet Earth as we know. I don't think as of today we know of life existing elsewhere, which we generally refer to as extraterrestrial life. Now, we are still at the threshold of trying to reach that extraterrestrial life. We don't know what form it is, what is the type of organisms that are there, whether they can speak like us, etc., etc., all enigmatic problems. Now, assuming that life arose on planet Earth, let me get back to the history of Earth. We are part of the solar system, and Earth formed from a chunk of fire, ball of fire, which came out from the sun. This was about 4.5 billion years, and as Indians, I would like to put it as 450 crores years ago. Then it took about 100 million years or 1 billion year for the Earth to cool, and it is now assumed that life arose on planet Earth about 3.5 billion years ago. That is 350 crores this thing. And for definite, we know that life arose in the ocean of the world. Please remember, I don't have the time nor the know-how of how the Earth, which was a red-hot ball of fire, took millions of years to cool down with torrential rains, and it is these rains that helped the Earth to get its oceans and water bodies. As all of you know, that this planet Earth consists of 71% water and 29% land. So we have definitely come to the conclusion that life arose in water in the depths of the ocean. Probably, if I could explain it orally to you, if I clear the waters from the ocean, I get the ocean floor or the basin of the ocean. There are small volcanic vents there, and probably life first arose in those vents. No doubt it is very hot there, but there is one thought that sulfur dioxide producing bacteria may have been the first forms of life. No doubt, evolutionary biologists would like to call this as a protobiont, which from inorganic chemicals we got a broth, a soup, which gave rise to the organic molecules. And it is the assembly of these organic molecules that gave to the first forms of life. And as all of us know or have assumed, that the first form of life was a single-celled animal, unicellular or acellular, as some would like to term it. Now, this single-celled animal, of the different types of chemicals that we are made up of, the proteins, the carbohydrates, the fats, or the lipids, the vitamins, the minerals, there is one other chemical, that is the DNA and the RNA, which are generally referred to as nucleic acids. Now, even the first forms of life should have had either a DNA or an RNA in its structure, because it is only this DNA or RNA that is capable of replicating itself. Proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and lipids do not have the capacity to replicate. So we are under the assumption that the first forms of life had some sort of a nucleic acid like the DNA or RNA to replicate. Now, there is a very famous saying in evolution called ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Ontogeny is development of an individual, and phylogeny is the development of the larger group. Now, this ontogeny, we can take the example of man himself. We begin life as a single-celled, fertilized from a fertilized egg. We begin life as a single-celled animal, and then we go on multiplying, a process which is called as mitosis. And it is estimated that this human body, this wonderful human body of ours, has roughly about 38 trillion cells in us. Well, all these are mind-boggling numbers which are very difficult to verify. Now, if I take the individual of the human being from a single cell to a multicellular organism, from multicellular it became organ grade, and organs, they developed, grew and became organ systems like the digestive system, the respiratory system, the circulatory system, the nervous system, etc., including the reproductive system. And then all these systems put together gave rise to an organism called the human being. Similarly, the same thing has happened in the process of evolution. And at this point, let me tell you that evolution is a process that is taking place in one line. There is no retrogressive step there, or it is not a reversible reaction at all. It is in one line, it is going and producing what we call as species. So all along the 3.5 billion years of its existence in terms of life on Earth, it has given rise to species and species and species and more species in the days to come, or in the years to come, or in the thousands or millions of years to come. Now, if I assume that life arose on planet Earth with a single cell, let me come to a classification which the world has accepted. This classification was given by the world's most renowned taxonomist, R.H. Whittaker, who is a scientist living in Kansas State, USA, and he proposed a 5-tier system of classification. According to him, he gave us Monera, which consists of the bacteria, including the cyanobacteria or the blue-green algae, then the Protista, which includes the amoeba, paramecium, euglena, etc., and then the fungi, which includes mushrooms and yeast, and then Plantae, all the plants that you see around you, as also those in the aquatic realm, and then Animalia, which includes us. Now, in this system of classification, viruses are excluded. And R.H. Whittaker thought that viruses are a very complex structure to be included in any of these classifications because it doesn't meet any of the criteria. Now, what is this virus? A virus becomes a living organism only in a host cell. Otherwise, outside a host cell, it is not a living organism. So even till today, I don't think the taxonomists around the world have been able to classify viruses as a kingdom or leave it as a separate group. Now, having talked about this classification, we now come to the first formed this thing. The viruses, no doubt, have got the nucleic acid, DNA or RNA as it may be, enclosed in what is called as a capsid. Please remember, viruses and bacteria are prokaryotes without a true nucleus, whereas all other organisms are eukaryotes which have got a true nucleus. For example, the paramecium, the euglena, the amoeba, and we all have a nucleus. So we are classified as eukaryotes. The others are classified as prokaryotes. The bacteria also don't have this thing, though they have a cell membrane. They are enclosed, the DNA is enclosed in a material called nucleoid, which is in the cytoplasm. So ours, or the eukaryotes, have got a definite nucleus in which this DNA and RNA is enclosed. Now, before I come to this in terms of heredity and its role in the natural selection, let me briefly talk about the evolution on this thing. From a single-celled animal like the amoeba and the paramecium and the euglena, we got into multicellular condition. There we came across the porifera, the coelianthrates, the Platyhelminthes group, the Aschelminthes group, which includes the human roundworm, the nematodes or the other worms, then the annelids, which includes the earthworm and the leeches, and then we came to mollusca and echinoderms. Mollusca, usually called the shelled animals. According to the theory of evolution, or our perception is, annelids may have given a dichotomy had taken place, and on one hand it gave rise to mollusca, on the other hand gave rise to echinoderms. The mollusks did not give rise to any other this thing. Probably that was the dead end of evolution for mollusks. And then in echinoderms, we assume that echinoderms may have been the precursors to the protochordates, or the first formed chordates as we call it. The protochordates, they are three classes. They are the hemichordates, the urochordates, and the cephalochordates. The hemichordate is exemplified by an example called Balanoglossus, which larva is Tornaria larva. And in echinoderms, the starfish, the brittle star, and the sea cucumber, all belonging to different classes, phylum and different classes, they produce a larva called diplural larva. The diplural larva and Tornaria larva of Balanoglossus share a bilateral symmetry, which was a huge similarity between the invertebrates, as we call it, and the chordates, as we call it, or the protochordates, as we call it. Now, this protochordate may have given, they are all marine animals, may have given rise to the fishes. Now, remember, fishes are are aquatic animals, both freshwater as well as marine, this thing. And there is a belief that these fishes, lungfish, which is basically a freshwater fish, may have given rise to the amphibians. Because amphibians, the frogs, the tadpoles that you and I have seen, are lung breathers. They have to come to the surface to gulp in atmospheric oxygen into their lungs. So the lungfish may have been a precursor to the amphibians. Now, the amphibians, in their they existed about 300 million years ago, and they may have given rise to the reptiles. Probably we have found out that there is a connecting link called Seymouria, Seymouria. That is the correct spelling of Seymouria. And this Seymouria appears to be the connecting link between amphibians and reptiles. Now, reptiles, again, just like in annelids, there is a dichotomy. On one hand, it gave rise to the aves. On the other hand, it gives rise to the mammals. Now, these reptiles gave the solution for development on land. Now, let me go back to the amphibians slightly. Amphibians, there is a famous saying in zoology, amphibians conquered a land only to return to water for the all-important function of reproduction. They could not reproduce on land. And that solution was given to us by the reptiles, which were able to develop on land an egg called the cleidoic egg, or the shelled egg. This egg could develop independent of water. Now, the question that arises to the inquisitive mind is, why did the animals which were living in water for so many millions of years, or probably billions of years, because I told you life started in the oceans, till the amphibians, they were home to the aquatic realm or aquatic media. Now, why did the animals think of leaving the aquatic medium and come on to a terrestrial media or land to live? Now, this question is not easily answered. We don't have a ready-made answer for that, but probably I can give you a simile here and quote what Sir Edmund Hillary, the first man who climbed Mount Everest, said. The reporters, the press reporters in those days, remember, I think he climbed it in 1952. And when people asked him, why did you climb the Mount Everest, the answer that he gave was, I saw the mountain and there was an urge in me to climb the mountain and I did it. Now, this urge was exactly the word that we can use for reptiles to come onto land. And how did they give us the solution? By laying a cleidoic egg, an egg with a covering called the shell. All other animals, till the reptiles, did not have a cleidoic egg, or they are called as non-cleidoic eggs. Now, this reptile on one hand gave rise to the birds, which are also egg-laying animals. And these birds, we have a fossil evidence for that, and that fossil evidence is Archaeopteryx, which is a fossil found in the sands of Bavaria, Germany, and I think one is kept in the museum at England or London, and the other at Museum of Berlin. So we can see the Archaeopteryx fossil form in these two museums. And then the birds, unfortunately, I mean, there is a dead end as far as the story of evolution goes. But the reptiles gave rise to mammals. That is our strong belief. And I'll try to justify how this has happened. Now, today in Australia, there is an animal called the duck-billed platypus. Ornithorhynchus is the zoological name, and echidna. Now, both these are what are termed as monotremes or egg-laying mammals. Egg-laying mammals. That means they must have evolved from reptiles, because reptiles also had the capacity to lay eggs, and these mammals also have the capacity to lay eggs. They are grouped under a class called monotremes. Now, from the egg-laying mammals, we came to the pouched mammals, the kangaroos and the koala bears, which are pouched mammals. And then we came to the last group, which is called the placental mammals, in which you and I are included. So, this is in brief the history of the story of evolution as far as life on Earth is concerned, along with the classification. Now, the moot question that arises to many people or to many young minds who are looking into science as a field of research, a question that arises is, are there more number of plants or are there more number of animals? The answer to that is, the animals outnumber the plants by a huge majority. Though the animals are not easily seen as we see in the case of plants, but the fact is that animals outnumber plants. Now, having said this much about the Earth and its origin and how we have traced down to mammals, now let me come to the theory of Charles Darwin. Now, Charles Darwin was basically asked by his father to become a doctor. So he enrolled in a medical college in England, but midway through he changed his course of education. He came to Christ College of Cambridge University to study BA in Natural History, continued an MA degree in Natural History, and in 1931 he got an opportunity to hop onto a Royal Navy ship called the HMS Beagle. HMS is Her Majesty's Service Beagle. It was a sail ship, unlike the modern ships today, and he hopped on that ship as a naturalist. Please remember, I told you he was born in 1889, and in 1931, that is when he was 22 years old as a boy, he went as a naturalist on this. And this ship took him all the way across Atlantic Ocean, around the Cape of South America, towards the Antarctica, and up along the western coast of South America, up to the Ecuador Islands. And there it finally ended its voyage in an island called the Galapagos Islands. The Galapagos Islands are also now commonly known as the Darwin Islands, because Darwin, he collected or he saw, no doubt he didn't have a camera in those days to picture all these, but it was in his mind that he captured all these pictures. He saw two animals that really struck him, and those two animals was the giant tortoise, which generally lives to 100 or 150, even sometimes 200 years, and the marine iguana. It's a reptile. Both are reptiles. Tortoise and iguana are this thing. This marine iguana used to get into the water, feed on the grass, which is called as kelp or the algae, and then come to the land to perform its other activities. Now, these two, please remember, Galapagos Islands is part of the Ecuador country, and they are a protected islands. There are about, I think, about 300 islands. It's an archipelago, and there is no habitation as far as man is concerned. They are uninhabited land, and only animals are there free to roam for themselves. That is why, probably because they don't have a predator like, say, a lion or a tiger to eat them, they are free and growing at will. Now, when he came back to England in 1936 after a 5-year journey, he started analyzing what all he observed. And during this observation, he kept on making notes. And in 1859, he wrote a monumental book called Origin of Species Through Natural Selection. Please remember, in those times, England was a very orthodox country with the church dominating all forms of life. And against this, here was a man, or here was a young man, trying to tell the world that origin of species, including man, is through natural selection and not the children of God. Okay, I will not go into the topic of religion because it is a controversial subject and it is a debatable subject. But according to Charles Darwin, he did face the wrath of the church. He was, literally told to get off England, but he remained in England, and this was this thing. Now, talking about origin of species through natural selection, let me first try to tell you what the species is. Now, in 1935, Ernst Mayr, an American evolutionary biologist, defined, and probably it holds a lot of meaning as far as the term species goes. Now, according to Mayr, M-A-Y-R, he said that a species can be defined as a group of individuals reproductively isolated from each other, but capable of interbreeding amongst themselves to produce fertile offsprings. Now, let me explain this. I don't have a blackboard. Usually I teach with a blackboard and chalk. But here I'll try to convince you. Let us take a population which has a group of individuals A and a group of individuals B. Both of them belong to the same species. Now, as long as there is exchange of genetic material between A population and B population, we call this as an open genetic system. Both of them belong to the same species. But once there is no longer an exchange of genetic material or chromosomes between A population and B population, we call that as a closed genetic system. Hence, whenever a species is formed, it is a closed genetic system. For example, I may sound a bit ridiculous here, but let me tell you, we, the human beings, cannot interact or reproduce with, let us say, chimpanzee, which is our nearest relative. We have found out that 98.8% of genetic composition of a chimpanzee is matching with that of the human being, or the Homo sapiens as we call ourselves. So, but yet we cannot reproduce with a chimpanzee. That means a chimpanzee is a separate species and Homo sapien is a separate species. Let me elaborate this a bit further to convince you. Today we know that the Homo sapien, I'll not go into how from Australopithecus to Neanderthal to the Homo erectus and then Homo sapiens. All those are stages in evolution as far as the evolution of man is concerned. But this Homo sapien today we know consists of, broadly speaking, 3 races. They are the Negroid race, the Mongoloid race, the Japanese, the Chinese, all are Mongoloid race. The Negroid race, you know what a Negro person looks like. And the Caucasoid race, to which you and I belong, the French, the Englishman, the American, are all Caucasoid. Now, there is an exchange of genetic material between a Negroid and a Mongoloid race as of today. But once this exchange stops, then the Homo sapien will be divided into a separate species as Negroid species, Mongoloid species, and Caucasoid species. This, I say it with the fact that this is what evolution has done along all its course, that is 3.5 billion years of its history. So we have come to the position of a Homo sapiens. In the next probably 1,000,000 years or 2,000,000 years or 10,000,000 years from now, I think we will find the separation of these three species. This is how species have been formed. Now, coming to Charles Darwin's theory about origin of species through natural selection, please remember that on his voyage, he observed a few things, managed to collect a few things, and then when he came back and studied these, he found out that most of these organisms, there is a tendency for them to produce in large numbers. That means the tendency amongst these animals, especially the animals and probably the plants also, is that at least out of the few, out of this thing, that is overpopulation which he called, is that at least a few will survive till they grow up to adult and reach a reproductive age and then give rise to the further progeny. This is what Charles Darwin said. He said it's called as overproduction. No doubt, why we are not having only elephants or tigers or any other animal or even a plant species is, please remember that nature has got an answer to all these problems. And the biggest solution that nature has given is most of these animals, including man, we are bound to die. We either die due to natural death or due to diseases. So hence, a population will not be allowed to explode and will be kept in balance. This is how Charles Darwin envisaged. The second thing is, these animals, there is a struggle for existence. Now, what is the struggle for existence? I'll give you an example. The Ridley turtle, which is found in the Bay of Bengal, comes to lay its eggs on the coast of Orissa, because probably for years or ages together it has been laying its eggs on the coast of Orissa. Now, there is no parental care in turtles like in the human beings. So these turtles, after laying the egg, the female gets back to the water. The young ones hatch out from the eggs, and on their journey from the shore to the sea water, they face many hurdles. That is when most of the young turtles trying to make their way into the Bay of Bengal are or meet a death, either captured by prey like the eagle or the hawks or this thing or some other animals, and then some of them do not have the means to get out of the sand. They get buried in the sand. There is no way to get out of it and they die. Hence, out of let us say 100 eggs that are hatched, hardly about 10 or less than 10 reach the waters of Bay of Bengal. So this is what Darwin meant by struggle for existence. The sea urchin, which is an echinoderm member, echinodermata, it lays about 1 to 2 million eggs, and out of that 1 to 2 million eggs, hardly 100 will survive to adulthood. Why? They have to struggle. Struggle from the early stages to the late stages to the reproductive stages. And in most of these, we find that they are attacked and killed by diseases and predators. So this tendency has to had led Darwin to propose his struggle for existence. And out of this struggle for existence, he came out with survival of the fittest. Now, let me give you another analogy here, that survival of the fittest is just like a lakh students taking IAS examination, the Indian Administrative Service. Out of that lakh, hardly about 15,000 or 20,000 get selected. The rest are not selected. That means, according to Charles Darwin, they are unfit. Only the fit will pass the examination and they have chances of survival in this world. So, that is how the animal life is also, or the plant life is. Survival of the fittest, only the fit, which can cope up with the environment and its harsh nature will survive. Then the fourth principle that fourth step that he enunciated was variations. All along his journey for 5 years on board HMS Beagle, he saw a variety of this thing. So he said, okay, this is different from that, that is different from this. And he was astonished by the fact. But he was not able to explain to us why this variation takes place. And finally, he mentions about inheritance. Some, he says, from the parent are transferred to the progeny. Now, he unfortunately did not, he meaning Charles Darwin, did not have a knowledge of genetics. Gregor Johann Mendel, a contemporary of Charles Darwin, he was born in 1822, died in 1889. He was in Brno, now part of the Czech Republic, but when Mendel did his experiments, it was part of the Austrian country, Austria, not Australia, but Austria. Now, Mendel gave us the laws, or he's called the father of genetics. And from there, we have picked up how this inheritance takes place. Now, going by the variations, why no two individuals are similar, why we do not resemble each other, if I take the example of human being, is because of this variation factor. This variation factor is attributed to our genetic composition. Now, before I get into a bit of genetics, I'll tell you about the two important divisions that take place in the living kingdoms or living organisms. One is mitosis, which was first discovered by Fleming, a German scientist, and meiosis, another type of cell division, which was discovered by Ortwig, another German scientist. So these two scientists, Ortwig did his work on the sea urchin eggs, where he discovered meiosis, and Fleming did his work on salamanders, a type of amphibian, and he found out about mitosis. Now, mitosis in simple language is called as an equational division, wherein the daughter cells receive an equal number of chromosomes as that of the parent cell. And meiosis is also called as a reduction division, where the daughter cells receive half the chromosomes of the parent cell. Now, if I take the example of this meiosis and refer it to man, in terms of man or Homo sapiens, the male produces a gamete termed as sperm, and the female produces a gamete termed as the ovum. When both these fertilize, that is, the sperm fertilizes the ova, the diploid condition or 2n condition is restored. The sperm has a haploid number of chromosomes, the ovum has a haploid number of chromosomes, and the 2n number of chromosomes in man is 46. The 2n number of chromosomes in pea plant is 14, and the 2n number of chromosomes in Drosophila, my insect which gave me my PhD degree, is 8. And it is very easy to study a chromosome behavior in an animal like the Drosophila, which has only 8 chromosomes, or in the haploid, n is equal to 4. Now, please remember, during research, you must remember that it is not easy to do research on an organism like the elephant, because it is very difficult to maintain an elephant. It is a humongous task, and the elephant has a gestation period of 22 months. So to get one progeny, I have to wait for 22 months. Whereas in Drosophila, I have to wait only for 10 to 12 days for for the progeny to be born. So it is easy that way to look into such animals. Let us take the example of rat or mice. They have a gestation period. The mice has between 18 to 20 days, whereas the rat has about 22 days. I get a progeny. or the first filial generation, as we call it, in such a short period. So that is why people around the world work on animals like or material like the Drosophila, the mice, the rat, and the guinea pig. The guinea pig has a gestation period of between 68 to 72 days. Even that is used as a experimental animal. Now, this story about how these variations is all because of the DNA structure that is present in the eukaryotic cells. Now, this DNA was first discovered by a Swiss scientist, Friedrich Miescher. I think I got the pronunciation right. Friedrich Miescher, a Swiss thing, and he looked into the DNA, obtaining his material from the pus or the bandages which were put around the pus of human beings. He would go to the various hospitals in Switzerland and then collect those bandages, and from there he extracted the DNA. This was in 1869. But the real theory of the DNA material, as we know it today, was given to us by James D. Watson, an American scientist, and Francis Harry Crompton Crick, a British scientist. In fact, Watson came all the way from America to Crick's laboratory, which was the Cavendish laboratory at Cambridge University, to do PhD. And on the lighter side, there is a story that James D. Watson did not spend much of his time in the Cavendish laboratory, but he spent more of the time in Crick's house with Mrs. Crick, trying to help her in cooking. So this is a story. I don't have evidence to prove that. But the first real structure of the DNA, the double helical model, was given in 1953 by J.D. Watson and Francis Crick. Now, Crick and Watson were aided by Morris Wilkins and Rosalind Franklin, who did X-ray diffraction studies, and Erwin Chargaff, who gave us the rule of base pairs, and then Paul Linus, who gave us the protein structure. So all these scientists did help in Watson and Crick describing us the present DNA molecule. We know that the DNA molecule is a double helical molecule consisting of two strands. And basically, what does it contain? It contains the nitrogenous base pairs, a pentose sugar, and a phosphate ring. These three components constitute what is known as a nucleotide. Now, in terms of the nitrogenous bases, there are 4 nitrogenous bases in terms of the DNA. Deoxyribose nucleic acid is the long form. Why deoxyribose acid? It has got a structural formula of C5, that is, there are 5 carbon atoms. Hydrogen atoms are 10, and O4. Usually the ratio of hydrogen to oxygen is 2:1. But here there is 1 oxygen atom less, so hence O4. C5H10O4 is deoxyribose nucleic acid. And in terms of ribose nucleic acid, or RNA as it is called, it is C5H10O5. Okay, now coming to the nitrogenous bases, these nitrogenous bases have 4 types in the DNA. They are adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. In RNA, thymine is replaced by uracil. It is a combination of this A and T always paired together, G and C always paired together. We are yet to understand why this pairing is so precise. But because of this pairing, we find the variations around us, which Charles Darwin was unable to explain. Why was he unable to explain? Because he didn't have the knowledge of DNA as we have today. So the variations, except in the case of identical twins, all of us differ because the base pair sequencing is different. For example, let me give the example of me. I'm not going into the entire genomic structure. No doubt the human genome was mapped from 1990 to 2003. And it is now, there is a National Human Genome Research Institute at Bethesda, Maryland, USA. Now, let me take the example of 4 base pairs, AT-GC, AT-GC. In Dr. Mahesh, I would say it is AT-GC and AT. This is how the difference takes, and that is why Mahesh is Mahesh and Gai is Gai. This is how the variation has taken place. Now, because of paucity of time, I will not be able to go into the details of all the other this thing. Now, it is this DNA that is inherited through sperms and ovum in terms of the human being. So the haploid becomes a diploid structure. That please remember that diploid first fertilized cell is the beginning of life, and from there it goes on multiplying by a process called mitosis, and it ultimately leads to the formation of this magnificent organism called the Homo sapiens. Thank you for your patient listening. I hope I have convinced you how it is relevant today. Because if I have to understand evolution in its true sense, it has to have a knowledge of many subjects like physiology, cytology, genetics, taxonomy, geology, geography, and that is where the modern generation have to apply their mind and come out with a proper understanding of how events have taken place in the past or probably in the future. Nobody can predict the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So your talk on Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, its relevance for the present generation. Sir, it was quite informative, very motivational, inspirational. Thanks for this talk, sir. Thank you for your wonderful presentation at our Talk of the Week, Pragya Prerana. Your expertise and insights on Charles Darwin's theory of evolution has captivated our audience. Your passion for the subject was evident in your talk. Your captivating presentation has demonstrated your deep knowledge of the subject and has resonated strongly with our audience. Once again, thank you for sharing your expertise and significantly impacting our event. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Bunny.